Hey, how's it going, everybody? Happy Monday. And with it being Monday, that means we have another regional recap to do. If you guys do not know, North American Regional 3 went down this past weekend. We got to find out our teams in the Mobile One Mountain Classic. Our 5 teams that are going to be going to the Winter Major, I'll end up talking about at the end of the video, and I will give a full detailed video on that in the future. But today's recap is going to be broken down 3 parts as always. We're going to talk about group stage, we're then going to talk about the beginning of the lower bracket, and then we'll talk about the end of the bracket. There's going to be some pretty exciting things. The big thing to pay attention to, though, is it is the Mountain Classic. A lot of us believed it was a play on words with Kronovi, and they ended up doing just that. In the third and final day on Championship Sunday, they had a kind of like a paying respects to Kronovi video in the pre-show. If you guys haven't checked that out, make sure you do so. But then he was actually a desk analyst for the whole day as well, which is really cool. So got to see him providing insight. Most likely going to be coming back for the Brawl this week. We'll do another Brawl show match, and Kronovi most likely will be in there for that as well. Been loving what he's doing, and good to show his support. This regional in general had a little bit of everything. There was some big upsets. There was a lot of weight to it. And these are the events that I look forward to the most. The ones that actually have weight to the matches. The ones where it's like, if these teams don't win in these scenarios, they are left out of the big event, which in this case is the major, which is going to be at SoFi Stadium on March 26th and 27th. So some pretty cool stuff. Without getting into spoilers, let's jump straight into the group stage. Group A, B, C, and D. As you can see, these are the results. This is how they went quickly between each group. Big surprise in Group A. Version 1 goes literally perfect. 9-0, 3-0 on the day. They sweep all 3 of their rosters. Randoms, Energy, and Shopify Rebellion. Big surprise here, though, is Randoms also beat Energy and cause a 3-way tie between those teams because Randoms has the best game differential at -2. Energy and Shopify Rebellion have to play in a tiebreaker, which Energy does win. They stay alive. Again, this one kind of reminded me of the major in fall, where Energy is like, oh, they're barely making it out of the Swiss stage, and then they have a crazy run. We'll talk about that later. Group B goes as expected, I would say. The only thing that could have went a different way is with Rogue maybe getting a win here or there, but otherwise, things go as expected. Group C, same exact thing. I will say Sonics having a big showing. Sonics have been trying to find their footing for quite a while now, and good to see them have a big result, able to knock out some of the other teams. As for Oxygen, this is where things got interesting because Oxygen did not top their group and they did not take second. They're playing the most difficult team from Group D, and in Group D, Complexity showed up. 3-0, Space Station 2-1. Space Station's only loss coming from Complexity. Torrent also having a big upset, and even with the resurgence of Xset lately, they do end up going 0-3. So both Sonics and Torrent making some big waves when it matters. I will say Complexity is kind of a unique scenario because similar to, I think, Envy is playing with Drees with only 1 week of experience, and they have been getting better over time. As for Complexity, they had a really long break after the fall split major and only had like 3 or 4 days before the first regional, and then they started to take some time getting back into a groove and realizing that you can't really take any time off. It will overwhelm you. V1 on the other side of that being like, hey, we're going to grind like crazy with our new player, and we're trying to make it pay off. Fruits of labor, as Com stated in his interview. So that is the results. We see Xset, Charlotte Phoenix, All Mid, and Shopify Rebellion get eliminated. And then this was on Friday. They also play the lower round 1. And the lower round 1 had a lot of really exciting matches where teams, for the most part, are lined up. The big one to pay attention to because of tiebreaker stuff for the playoffs was Oxygen and Space Station. V1, because they are top 6, needed Oxygen to lose here. And if they did, they qualified for the major. They're happy, good to go. Especially if they win their match over Complexity. At this point, there's basically 4 teams that we are paying attention to. V1, Complexity, Space Station, and Oxygen. Because Space Station actually lost in that lower round 1, point-wise, it opens up a bunch of opportunities, and they were looking for both Oxygen to not finish top 3 and for V1 to not finish top 2. Because if both those things happened, they would get bumped out. If version 1 finished second in the grand final, then they would have played a tiebreaker with Space Station. If they won, they get the 1-point difference, and they end up going above. Envy gets the short draw and has to play Energy, which they lose. Torrent and Sonics. Torrent ends up stepping up and being the better team there. Randoms ends up smacking Rogue around, which, again, a team that I mentioned with Randoms, you should not take lightly. When I did some predictions and stuff and talking with my chat on Twitch, we stream every day, but Tuesday, Sunday, twitch.tv/Lawler. Come hang out with us. But Randoms able to upset. I think Rogue's got a lot of potential, but the inconsistency has definitely been there. And Randoms is a team you can't take lightly. I do hope that they make a repeat occurrence. It's going to be difficult for randoms because they now have like a month and a half off plus, maybe more than that, before they get to go and play through another qualifier. So that is a lot of downtime. Hopefully they keep on the grind, they stick together, they don't make any changes, and they build off of it. Otherwise, things pretty much went as expected other than that Space Station Oxygen match. They also played each other last regional, Regional 2, where I think Space Station had a reverse sweep. I will say, overall, for NA Regional 3, there was some weirdness. Like, teams were whiffing a little bit more. There was some touches that were just, like, kind of odd. And I don't know if it was due to pressure or otherwise, but it definitely felt like at times, even in the high prolific matches on the final day, there was a little bit of sloppiness. It wasn't, like, too crazy, but it definitely felt like kind of that same thing we saw in Europe where there's like a domino effect because you're trying to apply so much pressure, you're trying to be aggressive when you go to make those big touches, even from players like FaZe, like Typical, just whiffing on the back wall sometimes, and then he would make up for it shortly after with like a solo dribble and stuff. It was kind of weird. So a little bit of everything there. So you are left with your top 8. You've got Energy, Torrent, Randoms, and Oxygen. V1, Complexity, FaZe, and G2 still left alive. We then go into lower round 2 with Randoms and Oxygen. And the thing here is basically now that Oxygen has jumped ahead, V1 has to perform 2 rounds ahead, while Oxygen, every time they get a win, it pushes V1 having to do better. This all comes down to initially that upper semifinals match. So I'm going to start with the upper semifinals and then work my way down. Complexity has to win the entire thing in order to be in the conversation. And if V1 wins, they've basically locked in a spot, is the way to look at it. V1 does end up winning in a very close series. Complexity came out of the gates fighting. Different Complexity than what most people were used to so far in the regionals. And this looked like the Complexity that was like a top 8 team at the fall split major again. It's like, okay, you guys do still have it. It's just a playtime thing. Glad to see you guys are back in the groove. V1, though, feeling pretty confident about it, said, hey, as long as we play our playstyle, we know how to beat these guys. And they do. Bootcamp buff being quite real for version 1. They move on to the upper bracket final, top 3 for the first time. You then see FaZe Clan and G2 playing each other, and G2's offense just looks impeccable. They do recreate some of the magic that we saw in Regional 2. They shut out FaZe Clan, so FaZe Clan drops down. We then see in lower round 2, Energy Torrent. Torrent actually makes it super close. Energy just felt a little bit off the entire weekend. It's not that they were playing bad, I would say, necessarily. It's just they weren't the, like, shut down type Energy, the team that you can't score against type Energy. Like, there was definitely a little bit of weirdness to it. And I don't think it's because they weren't trying. I mean, obviously, still top 3, give yourself the number 1 seed is really important. It allows you to avoid a lot of the complication in groups that are going to be at the major. So to give themselves an advantage being the number 1 seed is a very big deal. So seeing that, I think a lot of people were having this like copium for a lot of scenarios, and it's like you just try to ignore that and get ahead of it. But even with both V1 and Energy already qualified for the major, both teams obviously still trying to try their best to make sure they give themselves an advantage. V1 trying to outweigh Space Station, and Energy trying to get the number 1 seed overall. We then go to Randoms and Oxygen. Oxygen, although Randoms put up a pretty decent fight, does win there, which makes it even more difficult for V1. They move on. We then see Complexity try to fight Energy. Energy just is the better team here. Started off pretty good for Complexity, but then after that, Energy's offense just overwhelms and Complexity drops. So Complexity is now ruled out. There's only 3 teams in the running: Space Station, Oxygen, and V1. The other 3 teams have already qualified between Energy, FaZe, and G2 at that point. So you've got 3 teams fighting for 2 spots, and that's what became this overall narrative and a really exciting weekend because of it. You saw then Oxygen have to go into a really tough spot. If they end up beating FaZe, they then have to play Energy, and it's just like, I wish you guys luck because I just don't see it happening. Oxygen's win record against teams in the top 4 is like really, really rough. It's like 3-16 or something. It's not good. So Oxygen was expected to lose this one. They end up doing so. FaZe's offense is too much. And even though LJ's playing his butt off, does not have the support and the help. Toasty had some pretty good solo plays as well, but FaZe too much for a lot of teams. Oxygen, no different. They get swept. We then go to the lower semifinals. You got Energy and FaZe Clan, nail-biting experience. Both these teams going back and forth. It definitely felt similar to like a grand final. There was quite a few mistakes at times on the defensive half from both sides, but it neutralized pretty well, and you just got to trade off. First killer, I think, hit a quintuple touch at one point with a flip reset off the backboard. It was absolutely nasty. I forget if it was that series. I'm pretty sure it was that series. But yeah, there was just big moments, as always. Both teams trying to will themselves to move forward. Energy does end up holding on and clutching out. This is after Energy plays a tiebreaker to stay alive in groups. they've now made back to top 3, and because they are top 3, they have secured the #1 seed in North America. You then see V1 and G2 play each other in the upper final, and G2's defense started acting kind of shaky at times. Their offense also a little bit inaccurate at times, and V1 was there to punish. A lot of people putting a lot of emphasis on Calm and his confidence that he is playing with Beast Mode, becoming a very solid duo as Torment continues to hold it down. You are seeing a lot of aggression out of Calm in particular, with bumps and demos on the last man back, opening up a lot of opportunities. You're talking about all these teams now have such good offenses and defenses where the only way you can really open up those opportunities is infield passes, which we saw a couple of, but primarily demos and bumps. You've got to find a way to get these defenders out of the way. And if you are having a difficult time sustaining offense, primarily G2, which is who V1 wanted. If FaZe Clan would have moved forward in that upper bracket final, I don't know if V1 probably would have progressed. But because it's G2, I think they match up a lot better against G2. They have a winning record actually recently against G2 as well. The ability to more so have some space to work out on things, and I think V1 does a little bit better with G2's style of play, a little bit faster. Although FaZe extremely fast, I think the mechanics on FaZe is just such a huge emphasis that V1 has a hard time like settling into it. But then again, who knows now with how they've been playing. But I think this is a ideal matchup for V1. V1 spending a lot of time on G2 trying to figure out how they play and being able to figure it out, taking a lot of help from Energy and the way they send 1 and keep 2 back instead. They've been basically creating a challenge with 1 player in the lead, which is primarily Calm. If Calm gets a good 50 and then he's able to chase down and get a demo or a bump or a boost an eye, you then still have Beast Mode and Torment behind him to help support that. And it's been working really, really well. Energy does this a lot as well, primarily leaving Garrett or Squishy behind. They implement that and it works pretty well against G2. G2 still puts up a good fight, but a little bit of a shaky defense. Still 2 overtimes, still a good series. Very close games overall. It is V1 that ekes it out. And this is the exciting thing is V1, minimal overtimes and minimal game 7s and game 5s. They've been closing out their series. That's been the difference maker for V1. Instead of going down the wire and losing, they've been closing it out when they have a lead, which is weird. It's very weird for me as a V1 commentator and someone who's supported them and enjoys them heavily. Because of that, G2 ends up dropping down. They end up playing Energy 3 overtimes, super close series, but eventually it is Energy that ends up winning. This one, although G2 does lose 1-4, a lot closer than it looks. Energy, I think, just had momentum and stuff going their way. They did look a bit more refined than G2 did. If you go back and watch the VE1 G2 series in the uppers, you could see there was something a little bit off with G2 on the day, while Energy was a little bit more informed. So that ends up happening. They then progress forward. We go to the grand final, and V1 just closes it out. Also, at one point, I forgot to mention, version 1's fire alarm went off during the G2 series. They're playing through that. There was like a 10-minute break, and then they're just like, screw it. We have to play through it anyway. I'm pretty sure Calm has like a Twitter thread updating people on what went on. So apparently Carlos from G2 is like, yo, set the building on fire. We're losing. And it didn't matter. Either way, pretty crazy stuff. V1 absolutely peaking. I do think it is recreatable. The benefit of being at the boot camp makes a huge difference. They then go up against Energy, and again, lots of bumps and demos, very aggressive play style, just doing whatever they can. And you're seeing some emphasis in the same way that EU has been successful. The confidence to just put yourself in a bad position to give yourself an advantage. And you're seeing that a lot on the offense of V1 at times, where although it is a bit more risky, when Calm is so confident to stay on the top half of the field, he's not going past midfield. He's staying on the other team's side, and he's being a nuisance by denying their boost and getting demos. And he has faith that Beast Mode and Torment can clear the ball. It just puts a lot of pressure on Energy's last man back, and it leads to some opportunities. You even saw Beast Mode being wicked aggressive and just trying to bully Justin and Net and trusting that the person behind him is going to come in for the shot. So follow-up is there. A lot of people upset that V1 only bumps and only demos, but when you're going against Energy, which is probably the most prolific defense in North America, you have to find ways to open up opportunities. Demos is the way to do that. I don't care if you're an angry silver and you think demos are cheating, but demos are a huge part of the game. Teams have gotten so good on defense that you have to find ways to open it up. And some teams just don't sustain offense as well as others. V1 decided to go for bumps and demos, make Energy's rotations uncomfortable. Worked out. So it is a 4-1 victory for V1. 2 years of trying to build upon a roster. I've been lucky, and I've tweeted this out. I've been very lucky to be able to watch their journey over the last 2 years when they came in technically late 2019. They've been kind of building for this. You can see all the things foundation-wise that they've been trying to build with both AXB as well as Gimmick finally coming together. You've got an offense with 2 mechanical players. One, obviously, a little bit more emphasis on the bumps, looking at UCOM. But the ability to finally put stuff together and see it come together, you get praise from people like Garrett G saying, yeah, V1 is absolutely insane in scrims. They just haven't been able to translate it just yet. They're very unpredictable. They're very difficult to play. And he saw that unpredictability actually come out and win. I'm still shocked. I am very surprised that V1 won the whole thing. I expected them to perform well, but not win it. So everything coming together. Your 5 teams going to the major. You got Energy, G2, FaZe, V1, and Space Station. V1, because they win, they have a 1-point difference over Space Station, and they do take the 4th seed. If they would have lost here, if they would have lost here, Space Station would have been the 4th seed due to tiebreakers because of overall RLCS points as compared to just 3 most recent events, which they were tied in. So V1 winning here, big difference. 4th seed instead of 5th, bump Space Station down. And just going to take this time, I'll probably do a dedicated video on this, changing the narrative around teams. A lot of people, obviously, with the copium and this and that, whatever you want to call, obviously everybody's going to call me biased towards V1, but I do think it's an important storyline about the overall narrative of how to view V1. I do think this is the 5 strongest teams that North America could send. I think this is going to be the best chance NA has at international competition. Whether it be successful or not, we'll have to wait and see. But I will say, if you look at the winter rankings, when it comes to results, both V1 and Space Station have a point total of 110 and 220. The only difference is V1, when they went to the grand finals, won, while Space Station took 2nd. Other than that, they're identical. And I don't think anybody blinks at Space Station being a top 4 team. I want people to kind of view that understanding of, based upon performance, they have the exact same results as Space Station does, but better, with a new player on their roster. Yeah, he's not a rookie like Daniel, but Beast Mode did take a bit of a time off, came back. Again, it is a very successful team. Despite having some very big lows, they're performing at the same level of Space Station. Something to take into consideration. That is going to wrap it up for your recap. Super proud of the version 1 team and everybody else coming to compete. 5 teams for North America: Energy, G2, FaZe, V1, and Space Station. Very much so looking forward to the major. It's going to be a lot of fun. But we've got EU all this week. Lots of EU coverage about the groups, who is in them, results from certain teams from the closed qualifier that went upsetting. All that, more playoff scenarios and stuff this week. So if you want to make sure you don't miss out on it, first and foremost, if you enjoy the content, give the video a thumbs up. Helps me out greatly. Leave comments with questions down below. Links to everything in the description. And if you could, hit subscribe and turn on notifications. I'll see you in the next one. Peace.